Hello, and welcome to our session, Keeping Students Safe and Secure. I'm Eric Blakely, and I'm a consulting engineer for education here at Jamf. I primarily support our North Central and South America's region by helping schools tap into the teaching and learning potential of the Apple devices they've chosen to deploy. I'm also joined by my colleague, Ant.
Hey, my name's Ant. I'm also a consulting engineer for education. Apart from I do exactly what Eric does on the other side of the pond over in EMEA.
So, today we're going to be discussing our philosophy here at Jamf around securing the educational experience. Throughout our conversation today, we'll be looking at why we should be shifting the focus away from just the end user device and how we can leverage our education specific solutions to keep teaching and learning safe and secure. So, we've all been managing devices for quite some time, whether it's from the IT's perspective or the classroom perspective, but regardless, the focus has been on the device itself. However, over time, as devices have become more portable than ever, it has become the new norm that learning takes place at any time, anywhere. What this means is that school devices are used on and off a school network, and we absolutely saw this at a huge scale during the pandemic, and still do so today. When devices are within the school's network, IT admins are used to being the gatekeeper of that network and everything inside it. As devices go home, IT admins face additional challenges of keeping those devices and students safe and secure in the vast unknown, which includes a variety of unknown variables on the network side, such as open Wi Fi at a favorite coffee shop, or maybe even mobile hotspot connections. It's also common practice to move what has historically been gated, secure, on premises applications and services into the cloud to support this move to anytime, anywhere teaching and learning. From an IT's admin's perspective, this is potentially amazing. It generally results in less time spent on maintaining servers and even cost savings. However, there tends to be a trade off of having less control around access to the cloud based apps and services, as they're often hosted by public facing companies such as Microsoft, Dropbox, Google, etc. The cyber attack surface is growing, and educational institutions are seeing a huge increase in attacks, such as ransomware, with huge amounts of money and time being spent to recover data. The thing is, the attack vectors that are being used by malicious entities are becoming increasingly clever, and they're extending beyond the device. It's all well and good having endpoint security that might detect and stop malicious activity, but this really should be the last line of defense. It's worth highlighting here the role of user behavior too, and how it can open the door to risk. There are two key attack vectors that we should be keeping in mind. First, social engineering and phishing. This is where your users, meaning students, teachers, staff, they give away their credentials in one way or another to a malicious source that has been designed to look like something familiar. Here, we rely on the user, in many of these cases, students, to assess emails, links, websites, etc. The second vector is looking at the risk that users themselves introduce through their own usage in apps they use. Malware isn't the only app related risk, so here we're talking about apps that are designed to look like they do one thing, but under the surface perform other malicious activities. Again, this could be extracting credentials or setting up communications with command and control servers. In other cases, bad actors will use the fact that either users or developers don't always update or apply patches for known vulnerabilities. You'll see that it's not just the endpoint that needs protecting, and this is due to our now normal usage of devices and services in education. One where devices aren't always within our network, where the resources that we connect to are in the cloud and users regularly use devices for both personal and educational purposes.
So, with that view in mind, let's take a look at our traditional products: Jamf Pro, School or Now, Jamf Connect, and Jamf Protect. We'll see a common theme running through them. With Jamf Pro or School, we're talking about device management. With Jamf Connect, we're talking about Mac account creation and authentication. And finally, with Jamf Protect, we're talking about on device threat detection and prevention of malware. All are great tools to help secure the endpoint. But like Eric said, this should really be the last line of defense. What you'll have noticed in recent years is that we've started to expand our portfolio. And now we also have Jamf Data Policy, Jamf Threat Defense, and Jamf Private Access. And we can also bucket these into one kind of group as well. And these could be labeled as network security. So these are tools that can be layered on top of or with the endpoint tools to further harden the security posture of devices and users. Now, this layered approach is something very similar to what we do in our day-to-day lives. Let's take a house. There are some things that we do to secure and protect our house. We almost all have locks on doors or windows, and we keep these locked. Or at least we lock them when we go out or if we are going to bed, so we lock them overnight. You might also install an alarm. That way you can be alerted if anybody's trying to get into your house that shouldn't be there. Another thing that you might install is a camera to monitor your house. Now you can monitor things that are coming and going. And finally, although you wouldn't likely only get a dog for this purpose, we all know having pets in the house is a great way of alerting us if somebody's at your front door. All of these things we add to our house to make it more secure and harder for an intruder to gain access. But really, these are the last line of defense. Your house likely sits on some land, whether that's a garden, a drive, yard, and it's pretty likely that that garden has a perimeter that's been defined by a fence or a wall. Now, an intruder has to first get through the fence or wall before even setting eyes on your house, and to try and bypass the alarm or the video or the fact that they don't have a key. But the thing is, if we install a 6-foot fence around our house, it's going to be pretty hard for us to get out too. So to make this easier, we of course add gaps in our fences, but that also means it's easy for intruders to just walk in too. So we do some things to plug these gaps, one of which is to add gates. Maybe the back gate, we add a lock, and if you want to go through this gate, you must first have a key, and maybe that key lives in the house, which means that you have to have access to the house in order to go through that back gate. We can also choose some other things. So, for example, if we take a delivery driver, we might say we have a side gate or potentially a porch or something like that. And if the Amazon driver comes along, we only want them to use that side gate. So it means if we have a regular visitor and they try and come to that side gate, we already know something's a bit strange and something's a bit off. Now, I know this next one might be a bit of a stretch of the imagination for a lot of people, but just hang on there with me. Now, let's say on that front gate, we also employ a security guard. The guard can record anybody that goes through these gates, both in and out. But not only can they record it, they can also evaluate who is trying to come in and decide whether they look like a legitimate visitor or not. So they can do things like, this guy is suspicious, this person doesn't seem very healthy, but this jolly man here, he seems totally fine, he can come into our house, that's not a problem. On top of that, the guard can also think about who's coming out of the house and who's trying to leave the property. So when the teenager who's supposed to be at the library studying wants to go out partying, the guard can, of course, assess that and go, nope, you shouldn't be there, and prevent them from leaving the house and the perimeter there. Now, like I say, these are all things that should be fairly familiar to us, but let's turn this back to network security. Where we're talking about the house, in reality, we're talking about the device, the endpoint. And the things like the locks and the alarms and the camera, these are things like Jamf Pro or School, Jamf Connect and Jamf Protect. These are things to help stop intruder from getting to the device when they're standing at the door, essentially. Now, the fence or wall, that can be like our network. And like with a fence or a wall, we also have to have gaps in the network. That's just generally how it works. We need to get in and out. But like our fence, we should be able to plug these gaps with our security tools. So we have things like Jamf Data Policy. And the idea of Jamf Data Policy is similar to the guard saying you can or you can't go to a particular location. So in this case, we could say you could navigate to Google, but you couldn't go to Facebook. We also have then Jamf Threat Defense. And part of Jamf Threat Defense's job is to say, hey, you look suspicious or you look unhealthy, you can't come in. And we can start protecting our devices from suspicious and malicious kind of links and attacks that way. And then finally, we have private access. And like the back gate, that's the ability to kind of protect those online services, such as Office 365, where you must have the right key in order to get through that gate. Now, if we take that concept and think about the fence or the wall, we could have multiple houses inside of that perimeter, or maybe apartments. Maybe this is an apartment building instead. And all those apartments or houses could be different shapes and sizes. So, when thinking about network security, it's important to remember the house inside the wall or fence doesn't have to be an Apple one. It might just be a Windows device or an Android device. We can still help with the network, the perimeter, with things like Jamf data policy, Jamf threat defense, and Jamf private access.
Awesome. Thanks, Ant. That was a really great foundation. So let's pivot a little bit and see how we at Jamf specifically strive to help keep students safe and secure. So, when it comes to education, we do know there's a need for protecting beyond the endpoint. So, everything Ant just talked about with our security offerings have allowed us to create an education specific solution that is not only easy to deploy, but also built on industry leading technology. Jamf Safe Internet is our content filtering and network threat protection solution designed specifically for our education customers. Not only are we ensuring students have access to only appropriate websites, but we also protect against malware threats, spam, and phishing attacks. Jamf Safe Internet closely integrates with our flagship education MDM solution, Jamf School. Admins can configure Safe Internet without ever leaving that familiar and loved interface of Jamf School. For those times when admins do need to dig into reports or amend policies, we've designed a brand new education-focused console. Based on our commercial product, Radar, the Jamf Safe Internet console strips away all of those complexities and focuses just on the workflows useful to educational institutions and helps admins within just a few clicks. And at Jamf, we believe in student and teacher privacy first and foremost. So Jamf Safe Internet leverages the latest DNS over HTTPS technology on Apple platforms to prevent harmful content, all without invading privacy. Like I mentioned before, although technically a new product, Jamf Safe Internet uses the tried and tested technology by combining elements of our enterprise products, data policy, threat defense, and the Jamf Security Cloud, all of which are already being used by our customers around the globe. Safe Internet harnesses the enterprise power, but in a focused way that makes it simple and easy to use with workflows that are tailored to education. The database that powers the Jamf Safe Internet content filtering contains a huge number of entries and is ever growing. We currently handle hundreds of millions of requests per day and classify almost all of those requests on the first try, which is super important to ensure when you're trying to keep students safe online. Jamf Security Cloud not only applies those content filtering policies, but also evaluates network risks in real time using our threat intelligence engine, Miriam. This means teachers and students are also protected from phishing attacks, spam, or even malicious network threats, which are often delivered through socially engineered attacks and becoming ever more popular.
Let's take a look at how Jamf Safe Internet's network threat prevention can help with socially engineered phishing attacks. Social engineering refers to attacks where a user is tricked into giving away details while believing that they are clicking on or visiting legitimate links or websites. Here, we have an example of an email message that is using AppleCare as a way to trick people into giving away their details. If we take a look at this a little bit, what we can see here is that we have a couple of links onto various different websites. Here we have a case number, and the information looks like a legitimate Apple case number. But what we could find is clicking on that link might just take us to a site that's been designed to look like a login for an Apple ID. And when the user logs in with their Apple ID, they've actually given away their credentials. The other link there could quite simply take them through to a process that is around needing to pay for something, and they could be trying to mine things like bank details. And as you can see, from the user's perspective, this is really hard to really see. It looks like a legitimate email. And if the users aren't really paying attention to the email address that this email came from, it's really easy to fall into these kind of traps. Now, with Safe Internet on the device, as soon as the link is clicked, our threat intelligence engine prevents the user from accessing the site at all, in the same way that we would if a particular website was disallowed via a block policy. This really reduces the risk of unknowingly giving away details, as a user doesn't need to try and assess the link or the page and figure out if it's legitimate, which is harder and harder to do as these attacks become more clever and look more and more like the real thing.
Next, let's talk about our powerful one-click connection with Jamf School. With the integration, we can configure and deploy Safe Internet to your iOS and macOS devices, all without leaving that familiar Jamf School console. So to configure, you simply create a Safe Internet profile with a brand new payload that is automatically added and configured when the Jamf School and Safe Internet connection is made. From there, simply scope the Safe Internet profile along with the Jamf Trust app for our iOS and iPadOS devices to start protecting your teachers and students using Jamf Safe Internet's default block policy.
So let's take a look at what this deployment looks like in the back end here. So first we have our Jamf School console, and we have a brand new Safe Internet console. Once these are both spun up, we simply connect the two consoles together with a single button. What happens here is something really clever. In the background, the Jamf Safe Internet console will talk to the school console and give it some details. Essentially, it's a new profile that gives some details around how the device should be enrolled into Safe Internet, as well as the configurations of what the device needs to use. And it's pushed directly to Jamf School. So that just means that when we get to our Jamf School console, it's simple as clicking on a new profile and off we go. As Eric said, if we're going to do this with an iOS device, we also need the Jamf Trust app. So we would acquire licenses for Jamf Trust app through Apple School Manager in the same way we always would. Once we've got these two items there, we simply create a smart group or a static group, or however weird and wonderful ways you all create groups to deploy things to your devices. And everything hits the device. And as we said, because there's no configuration needed on the device or within the console, the device enrolls into our Jamf Safe Internet console. And then browsers, as soon as the user starts to browse, we'll also pick up those configuration policies in terms of blocked websites and spam, etc., as well. So it really is super simple to use.
Now, I generally don't like slides with a lot of words, and even more so, I don't like reading all of those words. But this one's super important for us because honestly, the slide sort of speaks for itself. But I do want to highlight that end part where Jamf Safe Internet has been designed for protection over inspection. So we really do want to make sure that we're making sure that we're a privacy focused approach to protect student data and educational data. This is why Jamf Safe Internet uses the latest DNS over HTTPS or DOH technology to keep students and teachers safe without invading their privacy. So, just a quick foundation set, DNS over HTTPS or DOH again is a protocol for performing DNS resolution via the familiar HTTPS secure protocol. A goal of this method is to increase user privacy and security by preventing eavesdropping and manipulation of DNS data by man-in-the-middle attacks by using HTTPS to encrypt that data between the client and the DNS resolver. This means that every student or teacher search query will be encrypted between the device and the DOH gateway, otherwise known as secure DNS, before being processed and evaluated by Jamf Security Cloud. Remember, the Security Cloud is not just controlling access to website based on categories that are blocked or allowed, but also evaluating network risks in real time, protecting against phishing pages and malicious or compromised links.
Again, let's have a look at what this looks like in the background or that kind of student experience. So once everything's configured with that one-click connection with Jamf School, the device gets a default filtering and threat prevention policy applied to it. So when the user goes to browse anything, it goes away and that request goes to our DOH gateway, which of course is then powered by our new console and the web filtering AI, for example, that we talked about before. Quite simply from there, it's evaluated for an allowed or block policy, but also and importantly for those security those security postures too that we spoke about. So whether it's a spam website, whether it's looking for phishing or malware. If it's allowed, the device is simply returned with the IP address of the site that they're trying to access, and the user doesn't know any different. However, if it's blocked or seen as a security risk, then the device is returned with the Jamf Safe Internet block page. It's really quite simple, and as you'll see, the user hasn't had to do anything on the device to make this work. It just works in the background for them. It's super simple.
So, for many schools and IT admins, the one-click deployment with Jamf School will be a welcome, simple workflow. But at Jamf, we also understand that one size doesn't fit all. That's why we've created a brand new education console where you can understand the effects of your work, customize your needs, and even fine-tune your environment. The default policy, which is applied straight out of the box, blocks the most harmful content and is in line with many countries' minimum recommended blocked categories list. But we have other presets available, such as unproductive content, which blocks social media and games to keep students focused. Beyond all this, admins can customize each policy in a more granular way. The Safe Internet console also provides a comprehensive view of blocked categories, network usage, and malware, spam, phishing preventions in a privacy-friendly approach that does not inspect a student or teacher's every move.
So with that, let's take a look at how easy it is to deploy Safe Internet using our simple education-focused console to modify any filtering and security settings after it's been deployed. So using Jamf School, start deploy Safe Internet is as easy as clicking Connect. Right from within the settings page, you'll see the Safe Internet module. From there, you really do simply just hit Connect. That's really going to start something in the background that's super important. You'll get a notification once the connection has been made. And here is where the Jamf Safe Internet console is giving all of that data over to Jamf School to build a profile. So things like the how to enroll, what block policies we have out of our default out of the box controls there. It's all going to be there for us. So as an admin, we haven't got to configure any of that for us. There is also a notification once things have been configured, just to remind you that although the connection's been made, we do need to apply that policy via a profile. So we'll go away and we'll start to configure that profile. So we'll go over to our profiles, and of course, we'll click New Profile. Now, I know for many of us, this will be really simple and something we do on a day-to-day basis, but let's just run through it anyway so we know we've covered everything. So we're going to be deploying this on an iPad. So of course, we click iOS and we click Next. This is a device enrollment. This configuration is across the whole device, not based on a user. So we want to click device enrollment. And of course, if this device has been enrolled to Jamf School using automated device enrollment, it means that the user can't take away this profile either, which is obviously a bonus in this case. So we'll hit next. Remember to give the profile a name and a description, especially if you've got multiple admins in your Jamf School console. It makes things nice and easy and for people to understand. Again, we'll hit next. And we've got nothing that we need to do with the time filter here, so we'll just hit finish. Great. At this point, we've got that initial profile created. We just need to add that new Safe Internet payload. So if we scroll down, you'll notice that there is a new payload available that's only there once you've made that connection. And you simply just have to hit configure. When you hit configure, remember, because of that one-click connection, we've already brought all of that configuration data in for you. So you no need to have to pop things in like the DNS resolver server address or any of the ports that it's going to use. We've done all of that for you. So if we just simply hit save now and start to deploy this, our devices will have that out-of-the-box default policy and your devices will start being safe and secure. But of course, we still need to go away and add this profile to the device.
Yeah, so our next step is to choose those group of devices that we want to enable Safe Internet on. So for that, we'll navigate to device groups and choose our group and then add that profile that we just created. We'll go ahead and click add and then choose our profile, and we'll choose that automatic as the installation type. And primarily this ensures that all devices in the group will automatically get this profile, meaning that there'd be zero user intervention needed. One last step is we need to get our iOS or iPadOS devices secured with Safe Internet. And we do that by deploying our Jamf Trust app as sort of that last step. So we'll click on apps. Then we'll go ahead and click add. And then we'll search for that Jamf Trust app. If you don't already have it, like Ant mentioned before, it's a free app that can be added to your Jamf School instance easily by grabbing licenses from Apple School Manager and then syncing your apps and books token. Again, we'll choose automatic as the installation method. We don't need the end user to do anything here. We want to make it as dead simple for them as possible. And that's it. We now have a device group that is set to install the configuration profile and the Jamf Trust app. At this point, the devices that are within this group will automatically start tunneling all network traffic through your Safe Internet instance. Again, just calling out that we didn't even need to go into the actual Safe Internet instance, and we'll have a base level of content filtering that is in line with many countries' recommended block categories, like SIPA in the US, for instance. But let's say we do want to modify or create different policies for different users. Let's go ahead and take a look at the Safe Internet console and see how we can custom tailor Safe Internet to meet your needs. First, look at the Safe Internet console, and you're presented with a dashboard that gives you your high-level overview of things like number of active devices, top categories, daily usage, and also a way to check how specific domains are categorized, as well as a way to easily request a change to how that site happened to be categorized. While we process hundreds of millions of requests per day with over a 98% accuracy, we still want to ensure that on the rare occasion a site wasn't dropped into the proper category, that you as the admin has an easy way to check and ask for a change.
So moving over to the actual policy settings. As we mentioned before, Jamf Safe Internet out of the box comes pre-configured to give a base level of filtering that meets most countries' basic filtering recommendations. We have also added some other default rule sets, like high bandwidth and unproductive content, to make it even easier to get your basic policy sets configured. So things like high bandwidth, you'll have additional categories blocked, such as social media gaming or file storage, and it really helps focus on the students to what they should be doing as well. As you'll see from this here, like I say, the default policy that comes with Safe Internet comes with that minimum filtering recommendations for most countries. So you'll see what I call the nasty, the nasty couple of categories already blocked as standard. So things like adult, extreme, illegal, etc. But I think in addition to this, and this is an important thing to point out as well, not only are we blocking those categories, but remember, we'll be blocking automatically out of the box malware traffic, phishing attempts, as well as general spam. Now, going deeper into the categories, you'll notice that there's a plus icon next to each category. This allows us to dig deeper into a specific category and further tune our policy. So in this case, if we drill down into the social category, we'll see the various social media domains that Safe Internet will be looking for. But let's say we have a policy for our high school students and they want to start to build their own personal brand and they want to leverage LinkedIn for their college applications. We make it really easy to custom tailor how policies work for different groups of devices. So you'll notice that we can easily change LinkedIn to allow. But you'll also notice that the overall category has changed to show both allow and block, letting you know that there are some subsets within the category that differ. So that's all great, but what about those oddball domains that we need to ensure that are handled in a specific way? Maybe we find something that we need to allow that falls into one of our block category lists, for example, but we need to ensure that the students have access to this. We can easily do this by creating custom rules. Within the custom rules tab, we can easily add individual domains or drag and drop a CSV file of domains and then set to whether or not they are allowed or blocked. And this is really useful. Although we've got a huge database, I know that for some customers, they want to ensure that there are specific URLs that are definitely being blocked, and they probably already have a CSV file of these already. So you can just pop them into here as well to really make sure that we are blocking everything that you need for your particular configuration here. So the next thing that we're going to have a look at is reporting. So we'll just go ahead and click on the reports tab here. From the reporting window, you can see all the results, but we can also filter that down based on time, date, domains, or categories. These results can also be exported again to CSV, so you can plumb these into other reports and other other tools that you might have in order to see this data as well. We can also sort by category and subcategory. So if we were to take iCloud, for example, we can see the number of transactions, transactions that are allowed, transactions that are blocked, and the devices that have triggered that particular, how many devices have triggered that particular category. Again, we can hit the plus icon to further expand this. Once we've done this, we can further drill down into the site breakdown, as well as viewing activity over time, which can give you a real useful overview of usage at key times a day and when and where people and students, teachers, everybody on your network is using particular websites or when they're using the devices in general. So it's quite a useful thing to see. Also in the report section, we have the security reports. So if we go ahead and click on that, this is similar to the report that we have for the site and category usage, but this time it focuses on that spam, malware network traffic, and phishing. Again, clicking the plus will expand that so we can see activity over time and drill down on those individual sites that are being blocked. Now, everything that we've spoken about so far is true of our one-click integration with Jamf School, and this makes things silky smooth and really easy to deploy. But actually, we can tighten this integration further. And to do this, we'll first click on the Settings tab.
Yeah, and from here we're going to see an area called UEM integration. This is where things get really interesting. Here's where we can link either Jamf School or Jamf Pro to Safe Internet to map groups. Now, most folks have already spent a lot of time creating groups within their MDM, so why not leverage those groups instead of having to reinvent the wheel? So you might want teachers to have a slightly different filtering policy than students, or different groups of students with differing policies. There's a good chance that we've already got groups like that in our MDM, like Jamf School. So once we've made that connection via our API in the backend, you're able to map the Jamf School groups, the ones on the left, to groups in Safe Internet, the ones on the right. With mappings complete, we can navigate back to devices, device groups, and we can see our devices fall into our Jamf Safe Internet groups depending on which groups they are a member of in Jamf School. Now, this sync happens between Jamf Safe Internet and Jamf School by default every hour, so if a device moves membership in Jamf School, it will automatically move memberships in Jamf Safe Internet. And then if we navigate back to our content policy, you'll notice we have a group level. And now we have groups created and mapped into Jamf Safe Internet. We can start to create different policies for different groups of devices. For example, let's say we want our teachers to have access to YouTube, but we want to block access for our students. Let's first select our student group in the content policy, and we can see that we've blocked the whole video and photo category. But if we expand it, we double check that YouTube is blocked and we can save. Next, we'll use the dropdown to select the teacher group. This time, we expand the video and photo category with Allow YouTube, remembering the overall category changed to show both allow and block, letting you as the admin know that there are subsets within the category that may differ. Now, for any device that is mapped to the student group in Jamf Safe Internet, it won't be able to access YouTube. But for a device that is mapped to the teachers group in Jamf Safe Internet, they will. This is a simple example, but shows how granular you can get with your filtering policies.
I think that's a really great feature. And along with that one-click deployment, this is really easy for admins to deploy to thousands of devices really, really quickly. Now, to wrap up, let's recap. The landscape in education is changing, if not shifted already. Devices aren't always within our network, and resources that we connect to are often in the cloud. And the users regularly use the devices for both personal and educational purposes. We need to think about the device, protecting our cloud services, patching vulnerabilities, and preventing suspicious apps, and protect the users from being socially engineered, or as I like to say, protect the users from themselves. It's important to start to think about your security and strategy beyond the endpoint. And at Jamf, we can help modernize the management and security strategy through this layered approach of manage and secure. Management is always going to be the base of all of your security postures. This is something that we've historically always done well. And the tools that we now have in Jamf Safe Internet, for example, allow us to extend this beyond the device. It's just like protecting your house with a key or a dog, and then extending that by putting up a fence with a gate. So, with that, I'd like to thank you very much for listening and joining us today. I hope you check out some of our other sessions that are happening during JNUC this year.
Yeah, thanks everyone, and we hope to see you again next year. Cheers.
Cool. Goodbye.